Okay, so we are doing Pythagorean inequality theorem. And pretty much what that means is, if you remember the three types of triangles, you can have a right triangle, an acute triangle, and an obtuse triangle, yes? Okay, if you, depending on how you have the Pythagorean theorem, it can tell you which kind of triangle it is. So a right triangle, what do we know about right triangles? Yeah, we know that this is 90 degrees. Okay, we also know that C is our longest side length. Okay, C is our longest side length. So C here is my longest side length. Okay, here C is my longest side length. And what do we know about this angle? If it's acute. It's less than 90. Okay, and so that's when, if you notice, C squared is less if you read it backwards. A squared plus B squared is bigger than C squared. C squared is less because it's acute. It's smaller. Yes? Then obtuse is when it's more than 90 degrees. So you'll see here, this is more than 90 degrees. And again, C is our biggest side length. And here, C squared is bigger than A squared plus B squared. A squared plus B squared is less than, because it's a bigger angle. Yes? Cool. Okay, so knowing all that, we can actually look at three side lengths and we can tell what type of triangle it is. Okay, so as long as C is always your largest number, because C is your longest side length, so which side is the longest? 16. Now, does A and B matter? No, so this could be A, this could be B. However, we don't know if it's going to be equal, if it's going to be greater, or if it's going to be less. So we're going to leave a blank in that spot. So we know A squared plus B squared, and I'm going to put a blank and then C squared, because we don't know what those equal. So we're going to do 12 squared plus 8 squared, and that gives me 208. Is blank, we don't know what symbol. 16 squared is 256. So what symbol am I going to plug in there to make it true? Less than. 208 is less than 256. Yes? Now looking up here, also that's telling me my C squared is bigger. If C squared is bigger, it's a bigger angle, which means what? Obtuse. You can also just match it because we wrote it in the same form as these. This is a less than symbol, this is a less than symbol. Okay, so this is an obtuse triangle. We are not going to do number 3. Okay, so looking at number 2, which side should be C? 26. Does it matter for A and B? No. So we could just always list them left to right. So I know A is 12 squared plus B squared is 24 squared. We don't know. And then C squared is 26 squared. So again, we have 12 squared plus 24 squared. That gives me 720. It's blank 26 squared. 676. So we're going to put greater than. 720 is greater than 676. 676 is smaller. So I know this is acute. Any questions with those two? Okay, so let's look at number 4. Which side length is going to be my C? 17. So this one I can just label ABC, which doesn't happen often, so be super careful with that. So we have A squared plus B squared blank C squared. Well, A squared is 8 squared plus 15 squared. There's my A plus B squared, which is 289. And then 17 squared is also 289. So what symbol do we use? Equals. Equals, because these numbers are the same. Therefore, this is a right triangle. Any questions with how to tell if it's right, acute, or obtuse? And we understand the angles? Okay. Y'all, I'm very limited with my geometry. This is my maximum. This is me. Okay, so looking here, we have to be able to tell what kind of angles these are, or what kind of triangles these are. Well, right away, what kind of triangle is this? Right. Right. This is a right triangle. How do I know? Right. Yeah, that little box in the corner tells me it's right. It's also like a perfect little corner right there. Okay, so if it's a right triangle, I know that I'm going to be using A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Now we like right triangles because they make life easier. Now which side is longer? Don't look at the numbers. Yeah, I mean, but not paying attention to the numbers, not just looking between these two, but looking between all three. This is my longest side length, therefore this is my C. Now here A and B don't matter, so we can just list them. And we're going to plug this in and solve. Now, like I said, we like right triangles because it's always gives us an answer, like just a straight answer. So a squared is x squared plus b squared is 6 squared equals c squared, which is 10 squared. And we're going to solve. Well, I'm going to have to simplify everything first, and I have to get rid of these squareds. So 6 squared is 36, 10 squared is 100. Now what do? Subtract 36 from both sides. That cancels, and I get x squared equals what? 64. Now, who remembers how we get rid of a squared? We've done this before, it's just been a while.
Square root.
Square root. So if I take the square root of one side, I have to take the square root of the other side. X squared cancels, the square root cancels the squared, and I'm left with x is, now if you remember back from this unit, you actually would always get a plus and a minus when you would do this, and it is 8. However, which one doesn't make sense for a side length? So can we pretty much ignore the negatives through here? Yeah, because you're never going to have a negative side length. So x equals 8 is my answer. Any questions with that one? Okay, I'm going to tell you right now, this is my bad. I definitely picked the wrong triangle for this, but we're going to pretend this is longer. I know they're the same. Y'all, this is why I don't teach geometry, okay? I'm sorry. Okay, this is, I literally told them one time if they made me teach geometry, I would quit, so. So knowing that these are A and B, and I know what kind of triangle is this? Acute. So I know that I'm going to use my A squared plus B squared is greater than C squared. C squared is smaller because it's a smaller angle. Yes? Mm-hmm. Okay, knowing that, let's plug in and figure out what it could be. So A is 8 plus B is 6 is greater than, we don't know C, so we're going to use x squared. If you use C, that's fine. Like if you leave it as C, that's totally fine. So here, we can literally type that straight into our calculator. 8 squared plus 6 squared is 100 is greater than x squared. Now what? How do I solve for x? Square root. I have to square root both sides. And again, we're not worried about the negative, so we're just going to say 10 is greater than x. Now, I know that this bothers y'all. It bothers me. I want my letter first. Okay, the big mistake I see with this is that people are not flipping the symbol. Isn't my symbol pointing at the x and eating the 10? Guess what it still needs to do? Point at the x and eat the 10. So sometimes people will keep the same symbol and you change the whole thing. You're saying x is greater when it's really x is less. Does that make sense? So be super careful. However, we are not done. Because give me a number that's less than 10.
5.
Smaller.
3.
Smaller.
1.
Smaller.
10. 0.
Smaller. Yeah, okay. Can you have a negative side length?
No.
Can you have a zero side length? So this has no limitations, and that doesn't work. So this is part of our answer, but we have to figure out the other part. And this comes into play with what we learned Friday. Remember when we had to figure out what the side lengths could be, and we would subtract the 2 we know and add the 2 we know? That's what we have to do. So knowing that, always take your biggest one first. What's 8 minus 6, and what's 8 plus 6? Well, what's 8 minus 6? 2. And what's 8 plus 6? So we know that x is between 2 and 14. Y'all remember that? We wrote at least to greatest, and we put the less than signs. However, this is the problem. The problem is that if you're like me, technically you could figure out your answer between these two, but sometimes it's easier to see. I am a visual person. I want to see it. So this is where what we're going to be doing starting tomorrow kind of comes into play. I know that my answer is between 2 and 14. Isn't this a fancy way of saying that? Yeah. So I know that it's between 2 and 14. So it's somewhere here. Now, what else did I just solve and find out? It's less than 10. So 10 is probably somewhere about here, and less than is that way. Now, where does it double shade? Where does it satisfy both of those inequalities? Does it work between 2 and 10? It has both? Yeah. Yeah, so my final answer is between 2 and 10. because x is less than 10, which is what we got, but x cannot be smaller than 2. It can't be 2 either. So you have to take both of those into consideration. Any questions with that? Okay, so let's look at another one. So here we have this one. So again, this is what kind of triangle?
Obtuse.
Obtuse. Now this one's super obvious that this is our C, so again, doesn't matter which one's A or B. And obtuse tells me that I'm going to do a squared plus b squared is less than c squared. C squared is bigger because it's a bigger angle, right? Okay, so knowing that, we have 4 squared plus 3 squared is less than x squared. If we type 4 squared plus 3 squared in our calculator, we get 25. Now what?
Square root.
Square root of both sides, and again, we're not worried about the negative, so we end up with 5 is less than x. If I flip that, what does it become? X is more than 5. What do you mean? Like right here? Well, the only reason I flip it, technically you don't have to flip it. The only reason I flip it is because we like to read it letter first. That makes more sense to our brains. If I say x is greater than 5, that makes more sense than me saying 5 is less than x. You see what I'm saying? Like our brains understand letters first, and that's why I flip it. If you don't flip it, that's fine as long as you understand how to read it. Okay? So again, we know that x is greater than 5. So we can just say 5's here, and we know that it's that way. Everybody okay with that? Okay, so now let's figure out what my possibilities are to figure out those limitations. Because if we just say x is greater than 5, we're saying a million. And let's be real, if we have 4, 3, and a million, those edges aren't touching. Okay? That's going to be too big. So we take 4 minus 3 and 4 plus 3. Well, what's 4 minus 3? And what's 4 plus 3? So we know it's somewhere between 1 and 7. Well, here's 1. Here's 7. Y'all, I'm not worried about how realistic this number line is. Technically, if your brain works and you can just like think of what it is, that's fine too. But if you get it wrong, I'm going to tell you to go back and draw your number line. So I know that it's double shaded from here at 5 to here at 7. So what's my final answer? 5 is less than x is less than 7. Now, if it was only a whole number option, what would it be? What's the only number between 5 and 7? 6. However, could it also be 5.5? Yeah, we don't know. It could be decimal, so on and so forth. Any questions with this? Okay, so looking at your practice really fast, I'm just going to kind of to explain it. Let's look at this one. Okay, which one is the longest?
20.
20, so that's our C. And then A and B don't matter, so it's however you do it. The first column says A squared. Well, A, I chose 13. What's 13 squared? If you're like me, or it's 169. I have to type it in my calculator, that's fine. B, I chose 11, so what's 11 squared? 11 squared is 121. And then it says A squared plus B squared. So 169 plus 121 is 290. So that's my A squared plus B squared. Everybody okay with that? Then it says symbol. We don't know yet because we have to figure out C squared first. So I need to type 20 squared. And if I type 20 squared on my calculator, I get 400. So what symbol is going to go in there? Less than. 290 is less than 400. Okay, and when C is bigger, that means a bigger angle. So what kind of triangle is this?
Obtuse.
Obtuse. However, if you just look at the less than sign and match it at the top, that also helps you. Yeah? Okay, one more thing, flip to the back. There's only 3 like the triangles. Okay, and just a reminder, this is my longest side, so this is C. I know that this triangle is kind of hard to tell, but I promise you this is C. This side is super obvious, but this is your C. Yes?
Yeah.
Cool. You should have plenty of time to finish this.